Hello everybody, my name is Uncle You.
Hello, I am Magic Mensch.
This is a new series that we thought about doing. We wanted to do sort of like an animation podcast because I do animation, Mensch does animation.
Yeah, I want to talk about animation.
We oftentimes find ourselves discussing all sorts of weird animation, weird histories, weird opinions. I essentially pitched it to Mensch as the Joe Rogan experience, but for animation.
Yeah.
Minus the drugs.
Not yet. It's yet to come.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
I'm working on it.
We don't really have a title for this yet. I'm working through names. And I'll put up the name of the series with a nice little animation here.
Wow, that was some great animation. I just love your animation, Uncle You. I really want to suck your... Never mind.
From days of long ago comes a legend. The legend of Voltron, defender of the universe. Black Lion, Green Lion, Yellow Lion, Red Lion, Blue Lion, Black Lion, Red Lion, Blue Lion, Red Lion, Black Lion, Green Lion, Yellow, Black Lion, Black Lion, Black Lion.
Go, Voltron Force!
Who together form Black Lion.
You collect toys, right?
I just love toys. They're my favorite.
I have a number of toys. Mostly anime figurines.
I tend to gravitate towards like Transformers and like game figures. Right now, this very second while I am recording, I am fiddling with my Master Chief from Combat Evolved figure.
Right now, I have like my Karibo plushie from YouTube's, and right next to it is a Pomni plushie just staring into my soul, judging me.
Husband and wife.
So, we bring up toys because the funny thing is, Mensch brought up animation and its ties to the toy industry because it's a story that goes back a long way and has had a surprising impact on both mediums, both on toys and on cartoons, essentially.
Yeah.
Cartoons based on toys go back a long way. Like, the first TV show based on a toy was Hot Wheels.
It does. I actually didn't even know there was a Hot Wheels like show.
Yeah, most people don't. I asked on my private Discord server for my fans and subscribers, and they brought up Hot Wheels cartoons. Then most people, they think of like those CGI movies from like the mid 2000s.
Yeah, with like the crazy cars with like all like the laser guns and like the swords and stuff on them, like one of those from Cartoon Network.
This one's from 1969, and it was back when Hot Wheels was all about like hot rods and cool sports cars.
The land yachts, right?
Cool cars and surprising amounts of sexism. The one episode I managed to find on YouTube, the girl of the Hot Wheels group, she's like, "Why can't I ever drive?" And one of the guys is like, "Oh, silly girl, don't you know women can't drive in the Hot Wheels club?"
Say, when do I ever get to race for this club?
Artist, you know girls can't drive for the Hot Wheels.
And girls never took auto shop before either.
And these are the good guys.
Bringing that Andrew Tate energy, I see.
That was also an early role for Albert Brooks, who terrific actor and comedian.
Who is Albert Brooks? I'm terrible with names.
He's been on The Simpsons a couple times, but probably most notably, he's the voice actor for Marlin in Finding Nemo.
That guy, okay. Yeah.
What's interesting about the Hot Wheels show, because it was so unprecedented, there was actually a bit of debate over it. Like, the FCC were like, what do you do? Because people actually complained to the FCC that it was just a 30-minute advertisement. So the FCC, at the time, they had a ruling where Mattel couldn't buy as much advertising time on that channel. I don't remember what channel it aired on.
One of like the 3 channels that were around back then.
Then in the 70s and early 80s, they started to loosen up. Like, come like the very early 80s, a couple things changed. One is the rise of outsourcing for animation. That was a big thing. Now syndicated TV channels could do cartoons. When the Star Wars action figures came around, people didn't expect them to be that big. Like, before then, the most merchandise you would get for movies and shows was movie soundtracks and maybe some like
like
costumes
a vinyl record for like a soundtrack or Like maybe a shirt.
Even the toys that were around, they were aimed mostly at like adult collectors, stuff like there were figures for the Love Boat back in the 70s.
I don't know if these were figures from the 70s, but figures that my dad collected a lot, outside of Transformers, from the old Star Trek cartoon and the Star Trek films. Like they're like those kind of like doll style figures, they're kind of like Barbies, and they're kind of construction, but they weren't Barbies.
Put things in perspective how big Star Wars action figures were. My old fitness coach guy, he talked about this for Christmas. They were giving out essentially vouchers that you could hold on to and like trade in at a later date to get Star Wars figure, because the demand was so high you couldn't get Star Wars figures at the time.
So like it was pre-ordering. It was pre-ordering.
And funnily enough, those vouchers are actually now a collector's item.
Yeah, most of those kind of like little things, things you wouldn't expect, tend to become very valued, especially things that like degrade.
Or since we're talking toys, anytime a toy has like a detachable sword or a plastic missile for like a launcher function, you can just forget.
Or just some figures that do have like launching. A lot of the time, like even like the spring mechanism over time will just fail. Like it'll just degrade over time and it won't work anymore.
And anything with rubber bands, too.
Oh, God. Bionicles are the worst about it.
We'll get back to Bionicle
we'll
later.
Get back about it. But Bionicle's a whole topic in itself.
So then the boom began, and it's hard to nail down what was like the first toy-based cartoon to be a hit, but from what I can tell, the big, like, Transformers was there, but before them, He-Man was kind of the big one. Very, very low budget production. It's Filmation, which...
Yeah.
If Filmation, for those who don't know, imagine Hanna-Barbera but with less money.
They tried. Some of their stuff is pretty cool, like Marshall Bravestar, but other stuff is...
Bravestar...
I think Bravestar is probably one of the greatest things they have made, but wasn't that in the 90s, or was it still the 80s?
Late 80s.
Okay. So basically the 90s.
But the thing is with Filmation, they did have really talented artists, and they were good at finding up-and-coming talent. He-Man still had a charm with it to keep people watching. Like, He-Man is very much a campy, goofy show, and they're kind of aware of it. Like all those He-Man innuendos people make about He-Man. Like, did they know what they were doing?
Yeah.
Because Lou Scheimer was a very progressive guy, he would actually hire a lot of people from like minority backgrounds. And the thing is, He-Man was primarily a gay crew on board.
Of course. That's why they gave He-Man all those ass shots.
Yeah, ass shots, thrusting shots. Lou Scheimer's daughter, I wish I could remember her name, she basically said that Filmation was the gayest animation studio around. He-Man was the big one. There was also Care Bears and My Little Pony. Those... You could tell they were testing the waters, because those started out with, like, TV specials initially.
When Care Bears came out, was it the movie that was first, or the show? Because I think most people kind of remember a lot of the Care Bears films, like the main two. I don't think a lot of people actually remember too much of the show. I'm going to confess something. I actually watched a bit of the show when I was younger.
So, if you didn't watch the specials, the Care Bears movie was kind of the big thing, which, that's another thing, like... Movies based on toys were a big thing too.
Well, of course, Transformers. I think Transformers is probably the most successful one of the bunch.
No, Care Bears movie was the big hit.
Really?
The Transformers movie was distributed by Dino De Laurentiis. Look him up sometime. Fascinating guy, but he was very much a low budget producer. The Care Bears movie had a slightly bigger one, and also infamously, Disney's The Black Cauldron came out the same year as the Care Bears movie, and the Care Bears movie was a bigger hit than the Black Cauldron.
Oof.
Yeah, because people talk about like Disney doing bad right now. Oof. Some of 80s Disney is rough.
Yeah.
If you watch the TV show or the movies, you see your favorite characters, and what do you know? Your favorite character just happens to have a toy.
Yeah. So you can have their adventures too. At home, at the whole family.
No joke. Transformers the movie apparently they aimed to get a PG rating specifically because that way parents would have to go with their kids, and so then the kids could point out to their parents what toy they wanted to buy. which is so despicable. I kind of love it.
Look! It isn't even dented! Oh shit, what are we gonna do now?
I do think a lot of those kind of films, like, at least like toy commercial films, I'm not gonna sugarcoat what they are, like Transformers, and G.I. Joe was surprisingly violent. The main guy, Duke, was literally, like, killed near, like, the beginning of the film, but they had to change it in production because I think a bit before that was, like, everything with Optimus Prime, like, they planned to kill off Duke, too. But they decided not to because the reaction to Optimus Prime dying was so bad.
I mentioned the Transformers movie didn't do well in theaters. It did great on home video because for a while, Transformers the movie was like the most easily accessible thing for Transformers on home video.
I don't think, at least a prospect that parents really think about too much, and this is just also from my own experience. The first experiences I had with Transformers is like some like old VHSs, and they're like very scattered. It'd just be like a couple episodes and then nothing. I don't imagine a lot of parents wanted to invest in getting VHS upon VHS upon VHS for just a couple of episodes. But when it came to the movie, it's its own self-contained thing. You buy the movie, you don't need to get anything else.
Yeah, in fact, actually, for a lot of people, they started watching Transformers after like the movies, so they didn't really grow up on Optimus Prime all that much, which is kind of surprising.
At least to me, my introduction to Transformers came. So I did have the VHSs, and I had my dad's old P1 figures. Me watching the show came when we got these like silver box sets of the Transformers that were like produced by this company called Rhino.
Rhino were the big distributors for Transformers. They also distributed the movie.
Yeah, like I have the big silver box set that those came in.
So clearly we mentioned a number of them. Ironically, Barbie didn't have a show during the 80s, weirdly, which Mattel for a long time were really adverse to giving Barbie her own show. Even then, when there were shows that weren't necessarily toy first, you could tell they were made. Toys became a central part of them, like Gundam, for instance. You can argue about like the subtle socio-political undertones in Gundam all y'all want, but you can't tell me Bandai's lurking overhead being like, make sure you give him the Kung Fu grip, we need to sell the...
But whenever I think of Kung Fu grip, I think of masturbation. so maybe it's a reference to the fact that people who collect toys Kung Fu grip their own cock. Maybe.
Okay. So we obviously they're all successful, but the thing is, let's talk about, was it a problem? Because the thing is, there was a backlash against toy cartoons, essentially, and vice versa.
There have been 70 programs made, many with 65 episodes, that are in effect toy commercials, which means that if you want to do, say, a biography of Helen Keller these days, you got to talk Mattel into making a Helen Keller doll first.
One that was kind of funny is Weird Preacher from the 80s tried to tie it into the Satanic Panic. I want you to try to guess what toy line he was complaining about the most.
Okay, what is the time frame? Like 90s?
Mid 80s, 1984 to 87, I want to say. You're not gonna believe.
Okay, what is it? I have no clue.
My Little Pony.
What?
Stuff like talking about how like My Little Pony was satanic. It is so fucking funny.
What was he saying? Like the heads are big, they're demons.
No, it's like something like the way the pony society interacts off of
it's
each
just
other.
unnatural.
Yeah, I don't think he had a southern accent. I think but you know,
he might as well have one.
He takes open a bag and he says, "Look into evil." And out of that bag rushes a spirit power which transforms these three ponies into dragons. Now this is aimed at little girls and boys.
I can see that we're actually destroying our children by letting them watch even the innocuous things because they're all going that direction. Yeah. How about Rainbow Bright? A little five-sided star, and it's upside down, which I'm not going to say it's used in this depiction, but that's a pentagram again.
Yeah, the other guy, one of the other ones he complained about, is no joke, and this isn't the toy one, but it's still hilarious, was Scooby-Doo.
What's wrong with... What?
I gotta show the VHS cover because I love the bootleg My Little Pony. Look at it. Oh my god, I never.
Oh, Yoda! There's Yoda! They see the little fucking goblin dude.
It's one thing for the Satanic Panic guys. They complain about everything. But there were people in the industry complaining. Like, probably one of the most interesting ones is there's an interview with Ralph Bakshi talking about toy-based cartoons, and he talks about how a lot of these toy cartoons, they kind of solely for profit, but also he feels as though they kind of rob away from the children's imaginations. It's like, oh, you gotta play it as the toy want.
Toy-based cartoons. What do you think of toy-based cartoons?
Well, first of all, I'm not opposed to merchandising after the fact. In other words, if a kid legitimately loves something, maybe it's good for him to get his hands on it. What I'm opposed to is when people other than cartoonists create a toy and then basically try to have a cartoon made about the toy, because that's a running commercial.
Does it hurt kids watching that stuff?
Of course it hurts kids watching that stuff. There's no love involved.
Actually, at the time, was working on The New Adventures of Mighty Mouse, which that was one of the first creator-driven cartoons in a while, so it is kind of a stark contrast to a lot of what else was coming out. So let's talk about it. Do you think, like, toy-based cartoons, especially in the 80s, were a problem?
I definitely think that okay, despite the fact I'm a victim of it, the Transformers. Again, I can acknowledge both how I love these things so dearly, but also it was incredibly predatory. Like, this was entirely done so this company could make money and use these kids' attachment to these shows to drive their sales. Like, that's what they're meant to do. On the other hand, aren't video games kind of the same thing?
Yeah.
Aren't video games kind of the same thing? You're given a product, and let's be honest, you only get it because you really like the way it looks.
Mm-hmm.
You like the way it looks, and it kind of gels with you. And you're sold this product, and you get it.
Yeah.
and that's how, like, all marketing works. That's just all marketing. I do think it was a bit predatory towards kids, but at the same time, again, a lot of other things are too. So to say that it is uniquely predatory is simply incorrect, in my opinion.
My opinion is, well, the thing is, for me, I think what you can do is you can take these toys and essentially be given a blank slate to make something interesting. Like Transformers, I don't know how the production process went, but I think, I imagine they were just given the robot designs and were like, here, give them personalities, give them names. We don't know. We just need something.
Yeah, because they bought them from Takara.
Yeah.
Like they bought these the figure, like the Diaclone figures and the Spy Change figures and the Microman line, where it was like cars with like little men that can drive them and stuff that also turned into these robots. And Hasbro wanted to sell it to American markets. So they imported it, and that's how we got the Transformers. And they had to figure out what would be more palatable for American audiences and more something that I guess would gel. Because not the whole kind of mech genre, it wasn't really kind of a thing in America.
No, not at all.
It was kind of like an incomprehensible thing, because you'd have like people like driving cars, but like piloting robots and this, that, the other. It was a lot. So what is a bit more palatable to the American audience? Space, science fiction, and that kind of stuff. And that's what they decided to go with for the Transformers. That they were alive. The toys were the focus. The characters that the toys represented need to be the focus. Not some... they're definitely like human characters like Spike and Sparkplug and Chip. But again, the focus was on the Transformers.
Yeah, like Diaclone / Microman or whatever. They didn't really have a plot.
They didn't really have a character. It didn't have characters. It was just, oh look, this super little man drives a car, and his car turns into his mech. And that was.
In fact, I'm looking online about what some of the Microchains figures were originally named before they were transformed. most of their names were
Like-
Mini Car Robo.
Yeah, just or a serial code. It was like a code.
Although Soundwave had a name, his name was Cassette Man. That's the thing I think is best. Let creatives have fun with it. Another one that's interesting was not necessarily toy-like, but it had a ton of toys, is the Real Ghostbusters. That was J. Michael Straczynski again, and the thing is, he was a huge fan of Ghostbusters, and I was like, I want to see what these guys are doing every day of the week. Like, what are they doing?
Yeah.
And the Real Ghostbusters massively flesh it out.
Because it makes sense to have Ghostbusters be a show. Because it sounds like, again, it just makes so much sense for, like, an episodic kind of, I guess, like, Ghost of the Week style show.
Yeah, and they make for great toys, too. Though, in the early 2000s, Lego had a line called Technic, which was these more advanced, quote-unquote, Lego kits.
Yeah, they were made for... They were generally marketed towards, like, an older demographic than most other Lego sets were.
Yeah, and the thing is, Lego was getting into a lot more about, like, their sets having an overarching plot. And so, for their latest set, called Bionicle,
Okay, so I'm gonna...
You know what? I'm just gonna let you take over.
Okay, so before we get to Bionicle, I feel it's right that we need to bring up Slicers and Robo Riders. Robo Riders and Slicers, I don't believe that they had too much of a lore with them. They were just robots made out of Lego. Robo dudes fighting some kind of vague threat. And they were okay. I don't remember them booming, but they were charming. Lego, at that point in time, also was having like a big boom again with their Lego Star Wars stuff. And from that, they realized, oh, people like stories. People like engaging like storylines and characters. So we need to invest a bit more in that. We need to capitalize on that kind of investment. So there was an untapped market that Lego wanted for their own branding instead of something that was licensed. Because, you know, despite the fact that Lego was making a lot of money from Lego Star Wars, that wasn't their license. That wasn't their IP. That still costed them money. It costed them money just to produce these products. So, they made Bionicle as one of their big flagships, start making their own licensing. There was a couple, like, other Lego lines that were their own kind of thing back then. Like Galador. We don't talk about Galador. There was a couple of attempts for their own kind of, like, characters and this, that, or the other. But none of them were as successful as Bionicle. And for a good while, we might not have even... Bionicle wasn't very recognizable what we'd have later. So the whole tribal aesthetic was always a part of Bionicle's kind of DNA. So we have like the whole tribal aesthetic, and originally Bionicle was going to be called Do Heads or Voodoo Heads. Yeah, it was supposed to be called Voodoo Heads or just, and then it was shortened to Do Heads. And the whole gimmick was they were Lego figures that would, like, punch, like, Rock'em Sock'em robots, and they would knock each other's heads off. Like, that was kind of the gimmick. The Lego, like, when the people who made it showed it off to Lego, they thought it was a bit too violent, so they dialed it back, and that's how we then got the whole mask system with Bionicle. Instead of knocking their heads off, they're knocking their masks off. They give them their power. So the first year of Bionicle, a lot of the figures center around like gearboxes and punching gimmicks and throwing gimmicks and all sorts of things like that. And the whole gimmick is supposed to be centered around the masks. And that was like the big thing. The big kind of... And this gets to my main point here. A lot of the intrigue and interest that a lot of people had with Bionicle was the mystery and how hidden it was to understand Bionicle. Because it wasn't like Robo Riders where there's just nothing. In Bionicle, it didn't give you all the pieces, but if you looked for it, you'd be heavily rewarded. if you go
Yeah.
looking for the story.
Yeah, so the thing is with Bionicle, it was kind of a big multimedia thing going into it. I remember the toys, which, by the way, one reason Bionicle did really well is they were cheap as shit when they first came out.
Fun fact about how cheap they were. They were considering for a while making a Lego vending machine with just like with Bionicle stuff in them. They wanted to invest in a Lego vending machine, and because Bionicles were made into capsules, they thought it would be, neat and trendy.
Yeah, because like I remember when Lego sets first came out. I think they were like $5 to $8 each, which
they're like $7. A kid with a decent allowance could like really, could get those kind of figures really really quickly.
Which I did. But the other thing is also like there was that sense of mystery, like because the toys came with a little mini CD that when you put in, you get little tidbits of lore and all that. And there was an online Flash game called
Madanui Online.
Yeah, what's great about that is that it doesn't spoon feed you lore in playing it. It's Lego Myst, if you've ever played that old PC game. A lot of it was overseen by a guy named Greg Farshty. He sort of dictated a lot of like the really interesting lore and rules for Bionicle. And sometimes the Lego company didn't listen. I will say, like, there's a bit in one of the online Flash games where two Bionicles have like a romantic scene, and Greg was like, no Bionicle love. The other thing is there were CGI movies made for Bionicle too, and the thing is, with those, they tweaked the design so that they weren't one-to-one copies of the toys. They had
the commercials were like one-to-one like CAD models,
and it makes sense to make those look like the toys. But the movies, these were supposed to be bigger, more story.
They're supposed to represent the character, not the toy.
And again, they also still felt like, telling a serious epic story. It was even kind of a struggle to get that, because apparently they pitched the idea of a Bionicle movie to a number of distributors and producers, some of which would have done a theatrical release. But they always wanted one thing that immediately made them say no. They wanted human kids to turn into the Toa, the Bionicle heroes. And it's just...
Nope.
A lot of these Toy Us cartoons also usually had a human kid to go along and sort of join in the adventures.
Yeah, to be that guy. Oh, I'm the fish out of water and all this. I'm the audience's perspective.
And they very rarely worked. That's the thing. Because the thing is with the kids, they want to play with the toys and imagine they're the guys doing the toy.
Yeah, they want to imagine they are the character, not they don't want to see another kid just being the character.
Kind of surprising to me that My Little Pony was the one that got smart very early on and dropped the humans. Meanwhile, Transformers still clings on to humans, except for like those IDW comics. Because again, kids can put themselves into a lot of different things. Like, in fact, sort of, what's his face? Lego, we brought up Lego. Lego did an interesting experiment where they put Lego Batman sets with a bunch of kids, boys and girls, to see what kids would do. And they found a lot of boys wanted to be Batman. They started like being meticulously close to Batman. And meanwhile, the girls, they kind of took Lego Batman and tried to turn it into something else, which I think both ways are fine. It shows they are using their imagination and then coming up with fun stuff.
The first kind of neighborhood that I ever really lived in my life, there's a bunch of boys and girls, and there wasn't a lot of the whole ew, icky girl kind of sentiment in this neighborhood. So girls and boys just kind of went over to everyone else's house and just kind of messed around. And whenever the girls in the neighborhood would come over to my house and mess with my figures, they didn't know anything about my Transformer things, so they just make up their own stories about what they were. So the girls would just assume and make up stories about what they were, and the boys would always ask, "Oh, what are these?" Like they'd want to know. While girls would just be like, "Oh, okay, I'm making my own thing up now."
I don't know. Like I remember some parents on Twitter in a really cute and really funny way what their daughter was doing with Barbies, and essentially they were doing Barbie murder court. And it's like, that's fun, that's cool, that's how kids should use toys. Murder court. But I mean more like, and that's how creatives should do it. You have a blank sandbox. Go nuts. And there are ways to do it right and wrong. Like, I feel like He-Man, the creatives were having fun with it and like coming up with stuff. Or I'm watching a show right now called Bionic 6, which is another toy tie-in, but a really fun toy tie-in. Like, it's about a family of superheroes. You can tell the creatives were having fun with it. Like, the writing's a little bit campy but fun. Like, the dad is like a total 1950s might as well make meatloaf kind of dad, and the villain I can only describe as a gay George Carlin.
I'll let them all watch my next little project, taking over the Earth.
But it also has like gorgeous animation. It's done by Osamu Tezuka's apprentice, and he worked on a few of these toy cartoons. He also worked on Rainbow Bright, and Rainbow Bright's first episode has like spectacular animation, and it's like.
Even though I have never seen a single Rainbow Bright figure like ever. I know it exists, but I've never seen anything of it before. Are they like just another one of those like Care Bear style like dolls?
Yeah, but aimed a little more at girls, I think. I have a here's a.
Are you saying that Care Bears are gender neutral?
Unironically, yes. Like, Care Bears actually were gender neutral. Yeah, I think that is another thing you can ding a lot of 80s cartoons for, is there was, especially late in the mid to late ones, is there was kind of like this sort of gender divide. And on the one hand, you started getting cartoons about girls, which was missing for a lot of them. Like, there's a reason why that Jellystone show, which with all the Hanna-Barbera characters living together, gender swapped a good chunk of them. It's because Hanna-Barbera don't really have that many.
They don't have any girl characters.
I mean, they do, but they're not leads. That's the
They're always thing. Very secondary, and they don't have any personality.
There's another Hanna-Barbera crossover from the 70s, Yogi's Ark. There is not a single female on Yogi Bear's crew. Okay, but we're getting off topic, but like, and even My Little Pony, the weird thing is with My Little Pony's TV show, it wasn't like all the ponies just having tea parties and all that, or shit like that. If you look at the funny thing is, the first episodes of My Little Pony, the original My Little Pony, it opens with a 10-parter. 10 parts!
I know one of the villains in My Little Pony is like a literal demon monster.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. The villain from the first My Little Pony special is Tyrek, and he's like, and essentially the thing is with him is that his goal, capture 4 ponies and turn them into demons for his like hell chariot.
What a baller! What a baller!
Yeah, if
that's
you
like some Dungeons and Dragons level stuff.
Oh yeah, and that's another one. The Dungeons and Dragons cartoon was also surprisingly like. They actually tried with it, because the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon is essentially an isekai with all these kids ending up in the fantasy world. And the funny thing is, they actually dive into being in a fantasy world frickin' sucks.
Yeah, like every single episode, they're like, this is awful. Like they make a point, like we're just kids. This we should not be here.
You put your dumb feet.
Okay, I'm sorry. Take it easy.
Sis, I hate this. I don't want to be in this world anymore. I want Mom and Dad and our house and my friends and...
It's okay, Bobby. It's all right. It's all right.
This is all Venger's fault. We ought to do something about that guy.
Because every kid thinks to themselves, man, I'd love to be in a fantasy world. Then they actually go there and it's like, yeah, no, I don't want to be here.
Clearly, there are ways to do it, and even My Little Pony, like My Little Pony's gone through ups and downs too. I watched a bit of the '90s series My Little Pony Tales. It's it's what people think My Little Pony. Really dumb slice of life, like shit, and also, there's a song sequence called Boys, Boys, Boys. And it's painful.
Boys, 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 what do we want with boys? One's a bully, one's a brute, but some I think are awfully cute. Boys, boys, boys.
But give it to a creative mind like Lauren Faust, and she has fun with it, and My Little Pony Friendship is Magic became like a huge cultural juggernaut for a little bit.
And then it died.
But yeah. I mean, My Little Ponies are still a success.
It was
but...
still a success. I don't think there's anything that can take away from how big it succeeded when Friendship is Magic came out. But at least as of like in modern day context, it's pretty dead.
Or also there's the Lego movie, you know, there are plenty of anime that are made to sell toys or video games. But again, give it to a right creative crew, you can have something. Like Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a series where it is clearly meant to sell the cards, but you can have a lot of fun, like coming up with creative card art or weird plots. Now, we got over the 80s, everything's successful. Let's talk about where it all went horribly wrong. Because we mentioned those movies, and there were a lot of them that were starting to bomb at the box office. The Rainbow Bright movie bombed. There was a Pound Puppies movie, which somehow has worse animation than the TV series. Like, the Pound Puppies movie is horrendous to look at. And then, just a lot of other ones. And even the well-established franchises were starting to fall off. Like, My Little Pony, he switched over to that slice of life format I mentioned before that nobody liked. They reworked He-Man to have, like, a much more anime-esque look. But at the cost of, like, there's no more campy.
Show me that one, because I know there's like another He-Man series they made at some point that a lot of people actually think is really cool.
The 2003 one version deserved more love, but there was a early 90s cartoon called The New Adventures of He-Man. They tried to take itself a little bit more seriously and also turn down the campiness. It sucks. All I have to show you in order for you to get an idea how bad it is, Skeletor. Look at how they massacred.
Oh no!
And technically, it has better animation than the 80s series. It's done by, but at the same time, Filmation had a charm to their animation style and like background art and character design. And they were the only ones. And also, toys were changing by that time, and a lot of things were changing around that time too. So the FCC started making rulings that shows could not promote the toys for the main network TV or syndicated. And they were also introducing a lot of policies about introducing more educational content for kids. So
those of us in children's television on the broadcast side and the syndication side were regarded as the bad guys. Because the people behind that act, Peggy Charon and the group, were passionate in their belief that some of the things we were doing for children were harmful to children. So we were naturally adversarial. So there was good and bad with the act. The limitation of commercial minutes, I was in favor of. The separation between commercial and program content, I was supportive of.
A lot of TV channels were starting up like educational blocks or starting to work in more moral heavy episodes into their shows. There was also a big shift at the time in like kids cartoons, because by the early 90s, comedy cartoons were becoming big business, or much more gritty, heavy action shows that were less toy friendly, and more creator driven stuff. Like if you look at the original 3 Nickelodeon Nicktoons, Ren and Stimpy, Doug, Rugrats, none of those are going to sell toys. There were toys for Ren and Stimpy and Rugrats, but you know,
they're like the plushes, like just like a single plush of like Ren or Stimpy.
Yeah, you don't look at Ren and Stimpy and think marketable characters.
You think marketable plushie.
No, Ren, don't turn me into a marketable plushie. There was a push for creator-driven cartoons, and a lot of these creator-driven cartoons oftentimes took the piss out of more toy-esque cartoons. In fact, even Garfield and Friends, which, you know, Garfield has been merchandised to hell and back, but like Garfield had an episode making fun of stuff like My Little Pony and He-Man.
We're going to teach you how to be nice to everyone and never ever be mean.
Giant robots. I want the giant robots back.
Like, famously, like, wasn't John Kay, like, really against, like, toy cartoons?
Yeah, because he worked on a lot of them and hated them.
There was a very specific word he used to describe them. I don't remember what.
Knowing John Kay, it was probably very inappropriate.
Described it like the worst cartoons ever, and that he, like, was, like, actively wasting his life.
Original toys were not selling as well anymore. Like, if you look, I looked through an old Toys R Us catalog from the early 90s, and, like, as far as action figures go, the big things were stuff like RoboCop, Jurassic Park, the Terminator, Batman.
There's a lot of the Alien figures, too.
Oh god, yeah, the Alien figures. Like, a lot of stuff based on movies and TV shows, but...
weren't most of them, like made by, like, Kenner?
Yeah, Kenner were the big ones. As far as, like, stuff based on, like, the big-name toys, there's barely any feature. To put things in perspective how bad it was, let's talk about Transformers G2.
Uh-oh. Okay, so... Transformers G2, I think, is a very kind of sad, kind of funny topic. A lot of, at least there wasn't a lot of actual media made for G2. What it was rather was the main thing driving the G2 story was the Marvel comic. There was kind of a G2 Transformers show, but it was more like reruns of the G1 show and some added like CGI like bumpers. Because there's because the plot of it when they were doing the reruns, like Optimus was like recounting stories like a kid, which it's not great. Anyway, so around that time when Transformers Generation 2 came around, it was that kind of era in the 90s where you have like X-Men, like that, like Spawn. Like edgy kind of like comics, you know. You have that kind of style of comic that's going on and this, that, the other. Transformers Generation 2 really wanted to get in on that because they wanted that kind of market too. They didn't realize that by that point, Transformers' reputation had really fallen off. Like really fallen off. Like, because of how unproactive the Transformers brand was up until that point, the Transformers kind of brand reputation extremely fell off, and it was considered like your dad's toys.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
like very, very uncool. Very it wasn't it wasn't it.
Yeah, in fact, Transformers, even in Japan, Transformers kept going. But by the early to mid-90s, Transformers was losing out to other mecha anime that was coming out. Like, a big one that came out was the Brave series, which had a lot of the same designers that Transformers had in Japan. But the Brave series was doing way better than Transformers was at the time.
Transformers had gotten that reputation, and Hasbro didn't realize that in comics. And G2 was... It was really obvious with really gritty covers, the kind of really harsh black, the fucking incomprehensible guns.
Yeah, the giant fuck-off guns. My favorite is
the
this
gritting teeth.
Yeah, it looks like a parody.
But when G2 like came out, the general response from people was both no one wanted it because, again, Transformers was seen as like your dad's toys. And because they were doing all this, it really felt like a how do you do fellow kids kind of move. They released new figures, they released some really good figures. They had the new tank Megatron, they had a bunch of new Decepticons and Autobots, and they're good toys, but they weren't popular. No one really wanted them.
When Beast Wars came around, like, it showed that, hey, there was room to grow, but essentially Hasbro became very hands-off with Transformers at that point. In fact,
Yeah, because it was mostly Kenner taking care of it. It wasn't Hasbro.
Yeah.
Kenner was the one designing the figures.
Yeah, Hasbro had merged with Kenner at the time, and essentially, I guess Hasbro were so ashamed of like the Transformers brand, they just offloaded it to Kenner, which Kenner was normally in charge of movie licenses or TV license. So I guess that leads us into sort of later developments, because obviously Beast Wars was a big one, but like as mentioned before, there are still cartoons based on toys, but a lot of them are like based around sort of familiar faces, you know, Transformers, My Little Pony, and Hasbro's attempt at reviving G.I. Joe number 527.
Like they always try.
But the weird thing is, despite toy-based cartoons not doing as well, or just being more selective, it kind of feels like certain TV networks still have this weird attachment to toy sales. A lot of the times. Like a good example, like a perfect example is with the Thundercats reboot. Very popular in the ratings, like very well received. And the toys, they did fine, but weren't the biggest successes, but they were growing.
Or a little bit more tragically, how Symbionic Titan was canceled because Genndy Tartakovsky didn't want to make toys of it.
The thing is with Thundercats, apparently they were set to go with a season 2, like, and continue the story, but what happened is Lego wanted to do another TV series, and they had and they had like a cat people centered TV series with Chima, and the thing is Lego already had a big hit with Ninjago. And so Cartoon Network were like, you know what, let's just put out our focus in Chima.
Yeah, let's just make Chima dollar store Thundercats.
Are you kidding me? Like the Chima sets were probably ridiculously expensive. And it's sad too, because Chima, I think it did okay, but like Ninjago kept going to the point Ninjago got a theatrical movie.
Fun fact about Chima and Thundercats, when all that was going on, I was staying with my grandparents, and my granddad would always watch cartoons with me, and me and him would watch the Thundercats show a lot, and he thought it was really cool, he thought it was really nice. He's not super into animation, but I think he's a pretty good judge of what is and isn't a good show, even though he probably couldn't articulate why. But we liked Thundercats. Then Thundercats was canceled, and Chima came on, and we started watching Chima together, and he audibly, like actually burst out and was like, "This sucks! Where's Thundercats?"
Yeah. I don't blame him. You brought up Symbionic Titan. I've always heard that the story goes that Cartoon Network's like, oh, we didn't find a toy maker or toy producer that was willing to pick it up. All that, and that ranged from a number of different things, because whether it be female protagonists or they didn't think it was very marketable, etc. But here's the thing: I am going to call bullshit on Cartoon Network there, because really, think about how many smaller toy companies there are out there, and how many who would love to have a Cartoon Network license.
Again, I guess this is like a little bit later time frame. But Steven Universe got toys through, the McFarlane Company, McFarlane Toys, making that Lego rip-off stuff. Like, you're telling me that McFarlane Toys can make rip-off Legos of Steven Universe, but they couldn't make Symbionic Titan. Again, you know what other series had, like, very, very popular, like, toy tie-ins at the time?
What?
Generator Rex and Ben 10.
Yeah.
Why didn't they just use those companies? Because they had a very big toy scene.
Or go with like smaller companies that would have been able to do it. Like just find on my shelf right now, I have figures of figurines dedicated to series that nobody would care about. Like, have you ever heard of the Caligula effect?
No.
I have a figure from the Caligula effect. Like the main character. I don't even know how I got that figure, but I have it. So I'm calling bullshit on Cartoon Network's. We couldn't find a toy. I think Cartoon Network a lot of times are just sometimes just lazy with that. Like you seriously
lazy ass.
like seriously, how did they not manage to find a person willing to make a toy replica of Megas XLR? Come on.
Yeah.
So they still have this like weird relation. It does feel like they're willing to let creators nowadays with toy-based cartoons have a little more freedom in certain aspects. Friendship is Magic is a big one. Like Transformers, I feel like for the most part, whenever a creative is in charge, it does feel like they're the ones in charge. Actually, I brought up Lego, but there's a recent Lego show called Monkey King that's by the same people who did Rise of TMNT. I think it has gorgeous animation. Like,
I think I've seen a little bit of it, but not much.
It is unbelievably like beautiful. It's and of course also in the world of anime, there's plenty of like toy tie-ins too, and video game tie-ins. But there are some shows that like kind of are able to go beyond it. Have you ever heard of I think it's Kimi no Friends is how it's pronounced?
I don't know about that.
Kimi no Friends was a anime that was supposed to be a tie-in to a phone app. But the phone game ended up being canceled, and essentially they still had to release the show. But the thing is, they decided, okay, look, this is gonna bomb badly, so we'll just give it to like this extremely small team, see what they can handle. Like most of the animation was done by one guy, and how bad some of the animation was. There's apparently a shot in one of the episodes of like a bus driving by. The wheels aren't even spinning because apparently they had this like nihilistic view that nothing was gonna work, and this one guy was in charge. He apparently made it he apparently got kind of attached and was like, you know what, I'm gonna try and make this work. And as a result, Kimi no Friends' anime actually succeeded. It was actually one of the most popular.
Man.
It's like, give a show to like
sometimes giving a shit makes the difference.
Yeah, and there should be a mixture of like producers having faith in the creatives, and creatives also like having fun with it, playing around with the ideas like a toy.
Yeah.
And we've seen it can work. Like I brought up how Mattel for a long time with Barbie was notoriously averse to doing anything with Barbie outside of those direct-to-video CGI movies. They let Greta Gerwig go wild with the recent Barbie movie, and they were rewarded with like the highest-grossing movie of the year. And in a lot of respects, that movie is still kind of a Barbie. So I think we're still gonna get toy-based cartoons a lot of the time. I just think a lot of them now, it can't just be, here's the toy, animate them. Now there's kind of has to be a lot more, especially because there's even more of like a crackdown on toy-centered kids content as of late. Like we recently had the big thing with Kappa going around on YouTube, and of course there's that kid, Ryan's Toy World or whatever.
Yeah.
Which, child labor aside, like there is the fact that his channel is basically a lot of times big old toy commercials, and he's now getting a cartoon series, an anime series rather, based on his toys. So there is this aspect of, there you go. It's giant toy commercial anime, as we brought up before.
A lot of it just seems like a lot of the toys now, the only ones I ever see commercials for anymore is going to be like you said, like stuff with like Ryan's World, the Coco Melon stuff, and stuff made for like older kids is like those like toy sets, like the set like that dinosaur one where you like throw the thing into like the cauldron and then it bubbles and then you get the toy afterwards.
Yeah, so like the ones that
it's like the skeleton things where you hit it with a hammer and then break and then shave away the sand. Like those kind of toys. They're getting really, really popular nowadays. And I think in this kind of day and age, I hate to say it because I'm going to sound like a doomer and I don't mean to be, but it's that I think that kind of stuff is just kind of fading out. Unless it's something that's already kind of pre-established.
I'm looking through because I was curious. There was a doll franchise called LOL Surprise, which is
those things.
Yeah, I looked up to see if they had a cartoon series, and they kind of did. They had a movie. It's only 47 minutes, released straight to Netflix, and the plot is The film is about Queen Bee, a young girl who finds herself in the popular Dolls' CG animated world, where she must help them create a movie.
So the plot is them making the movie.
I not gonna lie, I kind of...
They didn't know the plot, so they just say, hey, let's have the plot be we're making the movie.
Oh god, I just looked up a screenshot. I saw 2 attempts at making movies based around like the idea of certain toys rather than a specific toy, like the Lego movie, and both failed in different ways. One is the Playmobil movie.
Oh yeah, I remember when that came around. Like they made a lot of jokes about, oh, I'm Playmobil, ah.
Yeah.
It was that level of humor.
Yeah, and also they also redesigned them quite a bit. Like they gave them eye whites too, which doesn't really work for Playmobil. There was also an attempt at a Bobbleheads movie.
Oh yeah, that disgusting thing.
Yeah, which
that was also during like the time where just random products just got films. Like that was like around the time with like the Emoji Movie and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the thing. The Emoji Movie could have been about expression. Like how you express yourself. That's what emojis are meant for. They just didn't do anything with it, though.
It could have talked about a lot of things, like how kids talk about through social media, through technology. There's a movie that came out a little while after the Emoji Movie called Ron's Gone Wrong. And, like, that not so subtly is about, like, how kids communicate through social media and technology. Like, it's not subtle at all. But it does a great job. I will say this with the Emoji Movie. The shot right here of, like, the gross high five emoji cracks me up. I asked the people on my Discord, which I'm going to put up a link now. And
join the server, do it or else I'll kill you! Yep. I guess my final thoughts on this are, cartoons that have like toy tie-ins, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. But you definitely have to have like an actual passion there. Because the more passion you put in it, I feel like the more kids are actually going to gravitate towards it. Like Bionicle. The Bionicle was honestly like the big part of why we even like started recording this. Because Bionicle is like really a passion project. Bionicle, and there's a bunch of other YouTube videos that just kind of cover this. But this kind of little factoid that the person who was working on Bionicle for a very long time, he had brain cancer, like they had a tumor in his head, and he had to take pills to assist him with that. And a concept came to him one day of like, what if in every single pill there was a little soldier fighting my cancer? And that kind of gave him the idea to make this whole like ecosystem story where you have like the robot that has like Toa that are fighting off Makuta as like the virus and everything, like that kind of stuff. And like it just really showed how passionate he and the rest of the people working on the story were. And kids really noticed that, and I don't think a lot of people take the time to kind of respect kids that way with these kind of things, because a lot of the time, at least nowadays, toys that even don't have cartoon ties to them, it's like a thing I mentioned where it's like a set, like you put the monster in the cauldron, the cauldron foams up and spills everywhere on the floor,
yeah.
And then you get a soggy toy at the end of it.
I think
that's the big thing right now.
Yeah, I think if you're passionate, even if it turns out like kind of underwhelming, you can still feel it come through. Like, I watch a number of cartoons based on toys, and I could always tell when the creators just did not care. Like, I watch a show called Dino Riders, which awesome premise, but like you could clearly tell the creators just did not care working on the show. It is the most blah, boring fucking thing ever. But meanwhile, like Transformers or or He-Man, or Friendship is Magic, or Bionic 6, like, you can tell the creators, they wanted to do something cool. Well, like, whether it be through the animation, through the storytelling, or just being a little bit goofy and having fun. Yep. Yeah. In conclusion, buy Bionicles.
Buy Bionicles. Force Lego to make more.